Very good afternoon, my dear lecturer, Professor Olcott, and my fellow researchers. So I'm here to present my research study based on the role of learners' motivation and teacher support in enhancing the willingness to communicate in English among Sri Lankan secondary students. So this study is based on the grades 10 and 11 in Olcott College, Galle. Let me take you through a brief overview of what I'm going to present today. So first we have the introduction, and then the background for the study, the problem statement, the purpose of the study, literature review, research questions, objectives, methodology, significance of the research, and finally we have the references included. And let's move on to the first slide. I'll be giving you a brief introduction of what is my research based on. So this research explores the role of learners' motivation and teacher support in enhancing the willingness to communicate in English among secondary students in Sri Lanka, specifically based on the secondary students on grade 10s and 11s at Olcott College, Galle. So when we talk about English has become a main significant role, it plays a main significant role as it is a universal language in the world. So willingness to communicate is also a crucial factor, which is also known as WTC, which is a crucial factor in language acquisition. So it refers to the learner's readiness to engage in communication using a second language. And when we consider the context of Sri Lanka, mainly we find that English, even though English has been studied for several years, has been practiced for several years, there is a practical problem where there is a high tendency of secondary students where they have these low levels of willingness to communicate in English. So now we'll move on to the next slide, where I'm going to give you a brief background explanation about the topic area. So WTC in second language learning is a major factor to be considered because it shows that successful acquisition of second language, and also in Sri Lanka, despite of this importance of English, the students' reluctance to communicate in English is a major issue to ponder upon. So why I have chosen this topic is mainly due to this lack of confidence in speaking in English. The willingness to communicate has a hindrance among the secondary students of Sri Lanka. So especially when we look into the southern province, including the students of grade 10 and 11 at Olcott College has also this main issue where they have this tendency of low levels or the lack of motivation to speak in English. So there are also the limited researchers. While motivation and teacher support are two main factors that I'm focusing on, but there is, even though it has been widely studied globally, but in the Sri Lankan context, there is a scarcity of researchers that has been conducted, and also specifically, I find it that there should be a relation with willingness to communicate in English. And we are moving on to the next one, the problem statement. The problem identified here is like many secondary school students in Sri Lanka, including those at Olcott College, show how willingness to communicate in English, despite they have this low level of willingness to communicate in English, despite of the years of English education that has been conducted in the curriculum of the national studies. So basically, the main key issue that I will be focusing on is the students exhibit their reluctance due to the factors of language anxiety, lack of motivation, and insufficient teacher support. So these are some of the key issues that is being addressed, and also it has an impact on language acquisition. So this lack of WTC hampers their ability to develop practical language skills and apply them in a classroom context where they lack this fluency in speaking. Moving on to the next slide, the purpose of the study. I will be discussing the purpose of the study and why is this study being done. This study is mainly focused, and it's being done due to in order to understand how learners' motivation can be both intrinsic and extrinsic. and the teacher support which can enhance students' willingness to communicate in English. And also, according to the evidence base, by identifying these key motivational factors and effective teacher support strategies, this research aims to provide actionable recommendations to improve the willingness to communicate in English among secondary students. Next, I would like to focus on for what it is done. The purpose of its done is mainly due to there should be an improvement in their English language ability, in speaking abilities, and their willingness to communication can foster their student engagement within a classroom context. Also, to bridge the gap between this theoretical language and knowledge and practical languages can be used in a real-world context. Moving on to the next slide, and we have the literature review. So, I have categorized mainly motivation and WTC, which is also known as willingness to communicate, where basically Donnier 2005 speaks about motivation, where it is a central factor influencing WCT, which is also known as the willingness to communicate in English, has this impact on intrinsic motivation, where learners engage due to their personal interests and is more sustainable than extrinsic motivation. So also, mainly my theoretical framework is based on WTC model, which was introduced by McIntyre, 1998, which is included there as teachers' emotional support is highly important in order to engage the learners in a classroom context in order to communicate fluently and engage. That student engagement is highly necessary among a classroom context. So focusing on this, I will be focusing on these research questions, looking into the question 1. The first question will be, what types of motivation, intrinsic versus extrinsic, are most prevalent among secondary school students at Olcott College, Galle, and how do they impact their willingness to communicate in English? The second question will be, how does teacher support influence the willingness of students to engage in English communication? And the third question that I will be focusing on is, what strategies can teachers employ to enhance their students' willingness to communicate in English? Moving on to the next slide, I have categorized the main objective and the specific objectives. Looking into the primary objective, I want to mainly focus on how to investigate learners' motivation and teacher support influence in the willingness to communicate in English among the secondary students of grade 10 and 11 at Olcott College, Galle. And some of the specific objectives are to assess the motivation levels of grade 10 and 11 students at Olcott College, and to examine how teacher support influences students' willingness to communicate in English, and to identify the strategies for teachers to enhance the student engagement and communication in English. And finally, to explore the interaction between the learner's motivation and teacher support in shaping the WTC among secondary students. Moving on to the next slide, the methodology. So I have specifically used the qualitative research approach mainly, and I will be focusing on data collection methods, 3 data collection methods. The first one will be semi-structured interviews along with English teachers who are well experienced and who know well about their students. So these interviews will be conducted in order to understand what strategies and perspectives are used on student engagement. And also, individual student interviews will be conducted mainly to explore the motivation and their willingness to communicate. Their WTC levels will be also focused, and also the classroom observation will be conducted, and the classroom recordings will be also used in order to observe the actual student participation in English communication. Moreover, the sampling method that I will be conducting is the purposive sampling method, which is also a non-probability technique, where I will be conducting the interview based on 2 experienced English teachers and 20 students based. Each class will be having 10 students each in order to do my research. and we have the limitations and ethical considerations. So the limitations that I will be focusing it's focused on a single school, which is the Olcott College that as I mentioned earlier, which may limit the generalizability. And also the subjectivity in qualitative research is also the main focus based on interviews and personal perspectives in order to look into how their knowledge, their willingness to communicate is being concise and low. So ethical considerations are informed consent from all participants, including teachers and students who are participating in the interviews and their, or probably their guardians. Also, the confidentiality will be maintained for all participants, and voluntary participation is used in order to ensure that participants are not co-aided in the involvement. Last but not the least, let me talk a few words about the significance of this research. So the importance of this study mainly provides insights into how learners' motivation and teacher support can enhance WTC in English, and also it can provide insights into motivational strategies and the importance of teacher support in enhancing students' language communication. Moreover, it has, which also has an impact on society where addressing low willingness to communicate can help students develop better communication skills, leading to greater opportunities for their academic success. And this is the structure, the thesis structure that I will be following for my research study, and the references are included. And that's the end of my presentation based on the research study that I will be doing.
All of you having the same problem. You are not justifying that there is, you are not showing that there is an issue. Then from your experience, you say there is a problem. People, students are not confident to speak English or everything based on your experience and what you not supported from the literature. No statistics given, no research articles given.
I have included all in the document as well in the presentation. I talk about McIntyre's model and also Gardner's model, where they speak about the language anxiety and mainly the motivation, where it has been an influencing factor that affects the students. So
motivation factors you may have, but I am not asked to go through the written proposal. These all proposals for Iran. Okay, I was asked to give marks for your presentations. Then you have not justified that there is an issue. Because motivation, everything may be in the literature,
yes,
but in Sri Lanka there is issue in this
I have
regard.
particularly is mentioned there in the problem statement where
You mentioned without any citations. You mentioned.
the low willingness of communication is
Show me the citations given.
the references is
References, I don't know what are the inside in the
that is
references.
included in the proposal.
They show me the issue, explanation of issue without any citation. You say, then how we can believe it? And even in this school, why this Olcott College? What is the special issue in this Olcott College?
Because
You can't say that it is a limitation. If you can avoid, then you can't do in Olcott College. You are saying that secondary students in Sri Lanka. It's totally wrong. Then show me the citations to support your problem.
Miss, I have included those in the proposal.
Then better ask this Randy to go through the proposal and give marks. I already informed you last time also. This document is not was asked to submit for their purposes document papers. I will give marks for the proposals. Last lecture also I informed that.